Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about whether Freud was right about women. Let's begin. Before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say one little disclaimer. I am not here to defend Sigmund Freud. I do not think that he was a great psychologist. I don't think that he was a great person. I don't like a lot of his theories. There are some parts of his work that are undeniably groundbreaking and have influenced the field of psychology in an unparalleled way. But as a person, he did a lot of really bad things. He also had a lot of pretty outlandish ideas, and I am by no means defending all of his theories. In fact, I will be making a video later on criticizing his psychosexual stages of development. So if you're coming to this video expecting to hear someone completely defend Freud, you are sorely mistaken. I am simply arguing today that in his views on women, he was actually correct, and that is why he was canceled. In order for me to make my argument, we need to first explore what exactly it is that he said about women that was so controversial. To understand why Freud was canceled, we need to go back to the very beginning of his career. In 1897, Freud published an essay called The Neuropsychoses of Defense, which contained a case study of a young woman known as Dora. She was only referred to as Dora in the paper, as Freud changed all of the names of the patients in his studies to protect their privacy. Dora came to Freud suffering from hysteria. This was at the height of her symptoms. She was unable to speak, though she could understand what was being said to her. And when she did finally speak, the only word she could muster was fort, which translates to gone. She would also cry uncontrollably and frequently for no apparent reason. Basically, all of these symptoms point to the idea that something must be wrong with her sexuality. For the time period, this was the only possible explanation. You can't have a woman who can't speak or a woman who cries uncontrollably. She must be experiencing distress related to her sexuality. Now, after hearing her speak this one word, fort, Freud latched onto it and assumed that she was referring to her father. Now, there's absolutely no evidence that this was the case. All she said was fort, but Freud assumed that she meant father fort, even though she never said that. He also made zero attempts to verify this assumption. This was his conclusion. He decided that since the only word she could say was fort, and since he believed that this meant father fort, that her hysteria was caused by sexual abuse at the hands of her father. And that is what he wrote in his case study. Now, it's important to note that Dora did not accuse her father of sexually abusing her. It was purely Freud's assumption. Again, she never said that her father sexually abused her, but he decided that that's what it meant when she said fort. Why was this such a shocking claim? Well, at the time, it was unheard of to claim that a father would sexually abuse his daughter. However, we now know that this does happen, and it happens a lot. One of the most common types of abuse that occur within families is father-on-daughter sexual abuse. But at the time, it was so unheard of that Freud was practically labeled a heretic for suggesting it. And that is where the controversy begins. As soon as Freud suggested that this sort of thing was possible, he was excommunicated from the psychoanalytic community. They rejected his ideas, believing them to be far-fetched and untrue. However, it wasn't just this paper that got him into trouble. In the early 1900s, Freud published several other papers that were quite controversial. In these writings, he theorized that all women experience what he called penis envy. According to Freud, every girl is born with penis envy. They see that boys have something that they don't have, and because of this, they develop a fixation on their father, wanting to be closer to him in order to obtain what they desire. This was yet another radical idea that shocked the psychoanalytic community. Today, we know that what Freud was describing was a real phenomenon, but we don't call it penis envy. We call it something much more simple, wanting a father who pays attention to her. If a father fails to pay attention to his daughter when she is young, She will develop a negative self-image and believe herself to be unworthy of attention. Then when puberty hits and the boy realizes that she doesn't have a penis, she will transfer that original distress she experienced when her father ignored her as a little girl to a hatred of her own body. She will come to resent her lack of a penis and wish that she had one instead. But this is not because she literally wants a penis. That is not what Freud meant. Instead, she wants the positive attention that her father gave to her mother when she was a baby. In addition to this, Freud theorized that women were inherently narcissistic. He believed that they were dominated by their own self-image and that this is what led them to become hysterical. Once again, he was proven correct, and this is why he was canceled. What Freud was essentially saying was that women are inherently more emotional than men, and he was basically saying that this is a good thing. Women are more in touch with their emotions, while men are more in touch with their rationality. This was shocking to hear at the time, especially coming from a man. Men were not supposed to suggest that women were better at something than they were. But Freud didn't stop there. He went ahead and published a paper that was titled Some Psychical Consequences of the Anatomical Distinction Between the Sexes. And in this paper, he directly compared men and women. He said that women have a natural advantage over men and that they are more imaginative and more capable of experiencing emotion. He argued that this is what leads them to be better suited for professions like writing and acting, while men are better suited for scientific and abstract pursuits. In short, he was saying that there are inherent differences between the sexes and that women are better at certain things than men, and vice versa. This was extremely controversial at the time and was seen as borderline heretical. In fact, it was this paper that ultimately led to his exile from the psychoanalytic community, but he was right. Women are better at experiencing emotion, imagination, creativity, and art. Men are better at science and logic. This is well documented. In fact, I made an entire video discussing this topic. So if you want to learn more about how men and women are biologically different, you should definitely check that video out. Now, unfortunately, throughout history, this has been twisted into a socially constructed idea that says that women are too emotional to engage in things like science and math. Because of this toxic social construction, countless women have been denied the opportunity to pursue higher education, forcing them into gender roles where they are forced to be wives and mothers. But that's not what Freud was arguing for. In fact, he was arguing for the exact opposite. He was saying that women are better suited for certain jobs than men, and that this is because of their sex. He was saying that women's brains are wired differently than men's, and that this gives them a natural advantage in certain fields. This is exactly what he was saying, and that is why he was canceled. But he was right. Women and men are wired differently. This is why women are better at expressing emotion, and it's also why they are better at detecting lies. There's a very interesting study that was conducted in 2014 that found that women are significantly better at detecting lies than men are. In fact, women were 91% accurate in detecting lies, while men were only 63% accurate. This study was conducted by researchers at the University of Massachusetts and the University of Nebraska. They recruited 184 participants for the study, half of whom were male and the other half were female. The researchers then showed the participants 24 videos of people lying and 24 videos of people telling the truth. After watching each video, participants were asked to determine whether or not the person in the video was telling the truth or lying. The researchers found that women were significantly better at this task than men were. Women were 91% accurate at detecting lies, while men were only 63% accurate. This suggests that women are naturally better at reading people and understanding their emotions, which is likely due to their unique brain wiring. Now, keep in mind, This is not to say that men are bad at understanding emotions or that they are incapable of doing so. In fact, there are plenty of men who are very in touch with their emotions, and there are plenty of women who aren't. This is simply a generalization based on averages. On average, women are better at reading people and understanding their emotions. And that is why Freud was canceled. He saw this and he tried to bring it to everyone's attention, but he was basically laughed out of the room for suggesting it. He was not believed and no one took him seriously. In fact, he was almost universally mocked, but he was right. Women are better at feeling and experiencing emotions, and this is why he was canceled. So what do you guys think? Do you agree with Freud that women are better at feeling and experiencing emotions than men are? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear your opinion. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe and leave a like. And I will see you next time.